Greetings to each and every one of you who has joined this Bible study. This is the day that the Lord has made, and we shall rejoice and be glad in it. I'm Executive Pastor Tim Lane from Corinthian Baptist Church in Cincinnati, Ohio, where the Reverend Dr. KZ Smith is our pastor. And we're so glad that you joined us today for this virtual Bible study. We hope that at some point you will come if you are a visitor to our in-person location at 1920 Tennessee Avenue and join us for a Sunday service. Our Sunday service begins at 10 a.m. But again, if you're unable to join us, or if you're out of the city, or if you're out of the country, you can find us at our website at cbc-c.com, or you can check us out on Facebook. We also have YouTube as well, and we have our virtual services on all of those platforms. So again, we invite you to tune in with us at those various places if you cannot come and meet and greet us in person. But again, we're glad to have each of you join us, whether you are members of Corinthian or you are guests here just checking out our Bible study. I want to begin a short Bible study dealing with the Beatitudes, and we want to look at Matthew, the 5th chapter, the first verse through the 12th verse. Again, that's the Beatitudes, Matthew, the 5th chapter, the first verse through the 12th verse. And it reads, "Now when he saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, 'Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. And blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. And blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the sons of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." This, again, is a study on the Beatitudes. The Sermon on the Mount takes place on a mountainside, with Jesus delivering this sermon to a large crowd of disciples and those that are seeking him. It is significant because Jesus in this sermon reveals a new way of understanding God's law and his kingdom. He contrasts his teaching with the traditions of the religious leaders of his time and emphasizes a heart-transforming relationship with God. And so the Beatitudes found in the Gospel of Matthew are a collection of teachings given by Jesus during this famous Sermon on the Mount. These teachings serve as a guide to living a life blessed by God. And each of these Beatitudes begin with the word blessed. Blessed. Blessed, which can be understood as happy or fortunate, but it carries a deeper spiritual significance. The Beatitudes reveal the heart of Jesus and provide us with a valuable insight into the nature of God's kingdom. So let's explore the purpose of these Beatitudes and how they can be practically applied to our lives today. And so Beatitude number 1, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This is found in Matthew 5:3. And this Beatitude serves as the foundation for the entire Sermon on the Mount. It calls us to recognize our spiritual poverty, our utter dependence on God for salvation and righteousness. When we acknowledge our need for God, we open ourselves to receive his grace and enter into his kingdom. And so the Beatitude reminds us that true happiness begins with recognizing our spiritual poverty and our need and dependence on God. In addition to seeking God's kingdom, this beatitude also encourages us to embrace humility. One practical application is to actively seek opportunities for selfless service and giving. This aligns with Jesus' teaching in Matthew 25 and 35 through 36, where he says, "For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you took me in." And so we have to be humble. We have to learn how to bless others, and we have to continue to stand on the promise that theirs is the kingdom of heaven. For blessed are the poor in spirit. If we look at the second beatitude, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. This beatitude assures us that God comforts those who mourn and teaches us the value of empathy and compassion. It also reminds us of the brokenness and pain in the world and calls us to put ourselves in the place of those who suffer. And we know we can turn on the TV at any time during the day and watch the news, and there's suffering all over the world, whether it's hurricane, whether it's earthquakes, whether it's war, whether it's famine. There's all kinds of things that are going on that we over here in the United States of America don't necessarily have to deal with on a daily basis. But we have to also sometimes put ourselves in other people's shoes so that we can have empathy for where they are. For by the grace of God, there goes us. Who knows what tomorrow holds for any of us? And so we have to have compassion for people. We have to understand that God is going to comfort. But we also have to, as Christians, be able to comfort those in the time of need. And so, if we think of a friend or a family member who has experienced a loss and, we've reached out to them after, they've gone through a certain experience, what we can always do is lend a listening ear. We can provide comfort in ways of support just by being there. We can just pick up the phone or send a text, or we can send an email, just showing that we care. Sometimes just hearing, seeing, or just understanding that people are there with you in those times of mourning means a lot and can go a long way. And so we as Christians should do what God does, and that is comfort those who are dealing with mourning. The third beatitude says, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." Being meek means having strength under control. This beatitude teaches us the value of humility and gentleness. It is a call to set aside pride and arrogance and to emulate the character of Jesus. Being meek does not mean being weak. It means having strength under control, and it deals with cultivating the power of humility and gentleness. Beyond cultivating humility, we can also apply this beatitude by being peacemakers. In Matthew 5 and 9, just a few verses later, Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Meekness and peacemaking go hand in hand. We can work toward resolving conflict and promoting harmony in our families, workplace, and communities by having a gentle spirit. We don't always have to be rah-rah in our confrontations and conflict. We don't always have to be boisterous or outspoken. We can get our point across and we can say what we need to say with a gentle spirit. And so we have to be meek, for we will inherit the earth. Can you just reflect on a situation where you could have reacted with anger, or you could have acted with pride, or you could have reacted in a way that was unpleasing to God, but you chose to operate in humility and meekness instead? There's a lot of times during our day that those times happen, whether we're on the road in traffic and somebody cuts us off, or somebody says something that we don't like or we don't agree with. I mean, we have the choice at that point in time to, act out of character, or we can react the way that God wants us to do in meekness, and be gentle in our response and our conduct, and our attributes in terms of how we operate. The Beatitude number 4, blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they will be filled. Matthew 5 and 6. This Beatitude calls for us to seek righteousness vigorously, reminding us that a deep hunger for God's ways lead us to fulfillment. In addition to pursuing righteousness in God's way, it promises that those who hunger and thirst for righteousness will be filled. And so we can apply this beatitude by advocating for justice and righteousness in society. We know that there are a lot of injustices all around us in every facet of life, whether it's the government, whether it's our workplace, whether it's wherever. In Proverbs 31 and 8 through 9 says, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and helpless and see that they get justice. This means actively engaging in efforts to bring justice and righteousness to the marginalized and to the oppressed. And so we have to be a voice for those who don't have a voice. We have to say what needs to be said. And we have to advocate for those who have no advocacy. And we need to be in a position where we're always thinking of those who are being oppressed, and we're thinking of those who don't have the same advantages that we have, whether it's those that are incarcerated, whether it's our young people, whether it's whomever. We just have to be the voice, and we have to hunger for righteousness, and we have to hunger for justice, and we have to advocate for people who otherwise have nobody advocating for themselves, and we will be filled. Beatitude number 5 says, blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. This beatitude calls for us to cultivate compassion and forgiveness as we have even received God's mercy. It reminds us that showing mercy is central to the Christian life. And one way to apply this beatitude is by actively showing kindness to strangers. We can actively show kindness to our families. We can actively show kindness to people that we meet along the way each and every day. We can show kindness to our children, to our spouses, our significant others, or those who we interact with on a daily basis, our family members, our mothers, our fathers, our sisters, our brothers. We have to show kindness to everyone. We have to be merciful. We cannot forget to show hospitality, and we cannot, treat some people with mercy and treat others unmercifully. And we have to allow ourselves to be a beacon of light when it comes to interacting with people. We have to show that in our spirit. It is a gentle spirit of mercifulness, and God shows us mercy each and every day. And so we, in turn, need to show that to others along the way. Practicing hospitality can be a powerful expression of mercy and love. And so we need to have open kindness to people that we come across on a daily basis. We never know what their plights are. We never know what they are dealing with. We never know what they are going through. And just as God shows us mercy, we need to show others mercy as well. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. A pure heart is one free from hypocrisy and deceit. And this beatitude calls us to cultivate sincerity in our thoughts and actions, leading to a deeper relationship with God. Besides maintaining personal purity, we can apply this beatitude by actively pursuing reconciliation in broken relationships. In Matthew 5 and 23 and 24, Jesus teaches, so if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there. before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. This emphasizes the importance of maintaining a pure heart by seeking reconciliation with others. We need to find ways to guard and purify our hearts from negative influences, such as dishonesty, sometimes people, jealousy, or selfishness. And then we need to figure out how to maintain that, because it's easily sometimes for us to be brought out of that pure heart when we find ourselves in certain circumstances and situations that we just allow the carnal man to come out and not be respectful of people. We don't have that heart to reconcile. There are times that we are dealing with relationships and people, and we don't talk to them for years on end because we don't want to reconcile. We don't want to say I'm sorry. We don't want to be the one to forgive. And God is calling for us to have a pure heart, for he says the reward for that is that we will see God. And so we have to have a pure heart as it relates to our heart and the way that we operate and deal with others and the way that we just carry ourselves on a daily basis. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the sons of God. And this beatitude encourages us to actively pursue peace and reconciliation, reflecting God's desire for harmony among all of his children. One thing that we can do to engage in this particular thing is intercessory prayer for peace. We can all do that. We can all pray for peace. There's so much unpeacefulness as it relates to our community and gun violence. There's unpeacefulness as it relates to different countries and the way that we're operating with one another. But God is just calling us to pray for peace. God is calling us to be examples of peace. We don't always have to act up in certain situations. We don't have to always be rah-rah and do unpeaceful things. God is calling us to be peacemakers. And so every opportunity we see to make peace, we need to make peace. We need to operate in the way that Jesus would, and in the way that Jesus has asked us to do here in this Sermon on the Mount. In 1 Timothy, the second chapter, first verse through the second verse, Paul urges, I urge then, first of all, that petitions, prayer, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all those in authority, that we may live peacefully and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness, praying for peace in our communities, nation, and the world is a tangible way to fulfill this beatitude. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5, 10 through 12 lets us know Jesus acknowledges that living in a righteous life may lead to persecution. We may be persecuted for being righteous. People may not look at you the same way. People may say some things about you. And this beatitude assures us of God's presence and his reward in times of adversity. And we should be encouraging us to stand firm in our faith. We should encourage one another to stand firm in our faith. And even if you were or not being persecuted, what we can do as a community and as a church is to support and uplift persecuted believers. Hebrews 13:3 advises, continue to remember those in prison as if you were together with them in prison, and those who are mistreated as if you yourselves were suffering. And this beatitude just calls us to actively stand by those who are persecuted and to be a source of strength and encouragement. I can remember there were missionaries who were kidnapped over in Haiti, and it just vexed my soul because here there are some people over in Haiti doing some good things, and the government is in flux, and you have people just doing all kinds of wayward things. And the people that are suffering are the people who are the very people who have come to help this nation. And so at that point in time, it just called my spirit and called my heart to pray for them and pray for their families, and understand that they were being persecuted while they were doing good, while they were doing the work of the Lord. And anybody who deals with those kinds of things, persecution, we need to uplift. We need to surround them with our positive energy, them and their families. We need to let them know that we are a kingdom that is praying for them and that they have allegiance with us. And even though it's not us in particularly, they are being persecuted for a cause that we all are in line with. They are being persecuted for our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And as we conclude this brief study of the Beatitudes within the context of the Sermon on the Mount, let us remember that these teachings are not mere philosophical ideas, but practical guidelines for Christian living. Yes, they challenge us to examine our hearts and actions, to seek righteousness and to extend love and mercy to others, to be peaceful and look after those who are persecuted. May we all continue to strive to live out these principles in our daily walk with Christ and be an example to others who we come in contact with daily. May we remember that living out these teachings is not about perfection, but about a journey towards spiritual growth. I thank all of you for joining us in this Bible study on the Beatitudes. May God continue to bless and keep you all.